If you've been around here for any length of time, one thing that you'll observe is that I tend to preach in series. And so today is the fourth message and the final message in a series that's titled Thriving Relationships. My topic today is Thriving Through Tough Times. We have recognized that we all face trials and tough times periodically. And when you face these tough times, you must be able to thrive, that is, flourish, that is, prosper, that is, experience resilience as you go through these difficult times. When you think about thriving, you have to thrive in regards to mental and physical wellness. You thrive in regards to your purpose. You thrive in your character. You have to thrive when it comes to happiness and life satisfaction, and you thrive in your close social relationships. And so when you thrive, you're really saying, God, I'm not going to let this circumstance, this situation, change me into something other than what I'm called to be. And the beauty about serving Jesus is that it is the will of God for you to thrive. When you probe the Bible and say, okay, why did Jesus come? Jesus tells us in John 10, verse 10, I came that you may have life, and life more abundantly. And the word life there is the Greek word zoe, which means the God kind of life. What Jesus was saying, I came that you may thrive, and you may live a life that thrives. I love what Dr. Robert Schuller once said, tough times never last, but tough people do. My prayer is that you'll become a tough person. Tough in the sense that you're resilient. Tough in the sense that you flourish. Tough in the sense that you thrive at all times. And that difficulty just makes you thrive more. I want to spend our time in the practical book of James, a 5-letter book called James. James was the senior pastor of the church at Jerusalem. And early church history tells us that he was such a man of prayer that he developed large, thick calluses on his knees. In fact, they even said his knees looked like the knees of camels. His intention when he wrote this letter was to speak to believers that were scattered all over the world as a result of a persecution that arose in Jerusalem. He wanted to help them live up to their faith. Not live beneath it, but live up to their faith. And so this simple, humble pastor, he offered them timely truths so they can be able to correct confusion and misunderstanding as to how they look at life. He wanted to make sure that they did not backslide, but they thrived during tough times. Let me begin reading at verse 2 of James chapter 1. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. James, he's helping us understand, look, difficulties, it's a natural part of life. In fact, let me have a show of hands. How many of you are going through a trial right now as I speak? Okay? How many of you are not going through a trial? This is the best year of your life. Well, I pray that you'll not feel left out. I pray that you'll experience trials at the right time. You may say, I don't like that prayer. I speak against that prayer. I speak against it. Well, in case you ever have a trial, listen up, because you need to know how to thrive when you go through difficult times. And so I want to frame my sermon with a question. How do you thrive through tough times? And I want to offer you 3 answers for your consideration so you can be able to flourish in the midst of difficult times. My first answer is this: adjust your focus. Your focus plays a critical role in your emotions. It plays a critical role in your mood, in your goals, in your behavior, and your overall attitude. What you look at, your viewpoint, your perspective, it is very critical. In fact, let me read verse 2 to you again. James says, my fellow believers, when it seems as though you're facing nothing but difficulties, See it as an invaluable opportunity to experience the greatest joy that you can. Now you may say, I don't like what James is telling us. Well, I don't like it either. But I can tell you this, that after walking with the Lord for over 40 years, James is onto something. James is telling us that if you adjust your focus, you can be able to extract from that difficulty something positive and good. James is saying, look, James is saying, I'm not telling you that difficulty doesn't exist. Oh, ignore it. I'm not saying that, oh, you should just pull up your big boy pants, pull up your big girl pants, and just muscle your way through it. That's not what James is saying. James is saying if you learn to look at your difficulties another way, you'll find that you'll thrive. If you watch football, you'll know of the legendary football coach, Tony Dungy. Before he was a coach, he was in the NFL, played for a number of years as a defensive back. But his career as a player was cut short due to multiple injuries. And what did Tony Dungy do? He adjusted his focus and became a coach. And he began to turn all of his knowledge and direct all of his knowledge into mentoring these younger players both on and off the field. In fact, he writes books that help people outside of the world of football to learn how to lead and learn how to follow well if you're not the leader. But what I'm pointing out is that there might be a way for you to look at your difficult circumstance in a way that's going to be so positive and uplifting if you would adjust your focus. There are some questions you should ask yourselves. And when you ask yourself, it's almost like you're going to the optometrist and, when they adjust those lenses. And they're always showing you a house that looks far away. And they say, can you see that? Yeah, I can see that. And then your focus is adjusted. These questions will help adjust your focus. Does God know where I am? Does God know what my needs are? Does God have the ability to change my circumstance in an instant? And the answer to those three questions is yes, yes, yes. Now, if God has chosen not to change your circumstance, not to change your situation, then you must learn to adjust your focus by saying, I'm here by God's appointment. I'm here for God's time. When you adjust your focus, it changes your attitude. It changes your mood. It changes your perspective, your viewpoint. It makes you interpret your circumstance totally differently. What does it cause you to do? It causes you to thrive, to flourish, to be able to be resilient. Why? Because you're no longer saying, God, why are you causing me to go through this? What did I do to deserve this? Those are not the proverbial questions that yet you caught up in this vortex of confusion. What you ask is, God, I know you heard me when I prayed, but if you have not answered my prayers because you have something to do with me and in me in this situation. Have you ever read the book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings? Dr. Maya Angelou is the author of that book. And in it, she recounts a traumatic experience of her childhood. She was sexually molested by her mother's boyfriend. And after this heinous act, she told her brother. And they reported it to the police, and the man was arrested. And he was released shortly thereafter. Upon his release, though, someone murdered him. Well, Maya Angelou, she felt so bad about his death, and she blamed herself, so to speak. And as a result, for the next 5 years, it silenced her voice, the trauma. And she writes that during this time, she found a love and a comfort in literature and in the written word. And the language and expression of language, she began to fall into, and she looked at it as healing. In her words, Maya Angelou made this profound statement. I could be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. So what Maya Angelou did was the fact that she allowed her focus to be adjusted. She said to herself, I'm not going to let my trauma of my childhood define me and limit me. I'm going to adjust my focus, and I'm going to use it so I can become all of what I'm called to become. I want you to see that what you may be going through now, be it a financial difficulty, a medical difficulty, a relational difficulty, a job or vocational difficulty, or a spiritual difficulty, whatever difficulty you're facing now, I want you to adjust your focus. Why? So that it does not define you. You don't need to walk around bitter and angry and nasty and mean and despicable. No, that's not who you are. Adjust your focus so you can thrive through tough times. And sometimes we find ourselves like, it's like the proverbial parent that really, they're angry at the fact that they have little kids. And you don't realize that little kids, they're wired by God. They've been designed by God that every few seconds, the Holy Spirit says to them, squirm. And so they wiggle and squirm, and you're saying, stop that, behave yourself. And yet, they're not listening to you because the Holy Spirit tells them in another 5 seconds, squirm, wiggle, and they wiggle again. And sometimes, as parents, we hate the fact that we got to take care of these little kids, and we're hoping and wishing and praying that they become 10 to 12 years old, and then they become 10 to 12 years old, and then they get into other sets of issues. And it so bothers us. We can't wait until they're teenager. And then they're a teenager, and then they have the audacity to ask for the family car, and then you have to stay up all night waiting until they get home because you can't sleep because you don't know what in the world they're doing. And then you wish that they go off to college, and they go off to college, and then here you are now wondering, what are they doing? I hope they're studying. I hope they're not losing my money because I've invested in their education. Then you're wishing that they graduate from college and get a job and make their own money. And when they do, and they're out of the house, their own career, and you sit there and you look at your wife and you say, my God, the house is so empty. Where did the good days go? You know why? Because we hate where we are, and we struggle with what we're going through. And what I'm saying to you is adjust your focus, and you'll start to thrive, even if the situation doesn't change. I love what Christine Kane, author and minister, says. Sometimes when you're in a dark place, you think you've been buried, but actually you've been planted. And if you can see that your dark, difficult place is not your burial spot, but your planting spot, you can thrive right where you are. If you keep waiting for tomorrow so you can thrive, until you get through this, when I get through this, man, I'm going to really live. When I get through this difficulty, oh my Lord, I'll be the strongest believer that there is. When I get through this moment, man, you don't know. Watch out, world. Here comes a powerful, mighty warrior for God. And I'm saying you're playing games. How do I know that? Because I used to say that. How do I know that? Because I know that's not the way you live. And when you give your heart to Jesus, you also receive the DNA, that is the cellular mechanism to thrive. It is the will of God that you thrive. Jesus doesn't want children that are just surviving. Man, how are you doing? Man, I'm under it. I'm under the weight of the world. No, He wants you to thrive. Even though life may not be perfect, it's okay. And we don't want a perfect life. We want a thriving life. And if we can teach our children how to thrive, rather than being snowflakes, many kids, they can't go through anything. They fall apart. They're on meds for everything. Meds for this, meds for that, meds for the meds for the meds. And I'm saying that when we grew up, they didn't have that. We just knew we had to suck it up because, mom or dad wasn't coming to school to solve your problems. You got to solve it. We don't know about that now because we raised snowflakes. But what would help is that you Teach your children how to thrive by you thriving. Let them watch you thrive. And when time permits, drop the little hint. Show them, tell them what you do. And you say, what I did was I adjusted my focus. And they'll ask you, what do you mean by that? And then you start to unpack it. Let me ask the question again. How do you thrive through tough times? I offer you the second answer. Turn your obstacles into opportunities. See, with an adjusted focus, you start asking bold questions. Questions like, how can I take this trial and help it to direct me towards my destiny? How can I take advantage of my problems so I may thrive? Let me bring you back to the text, verse 2. This time I want to read from the New Living Translation. I read different translations of the Bible because there are times the scholars interpret a word slightly differently because it has a range of synonyms. James says, dear brothers and sisters, when trouble of any kind, I got stuck there, any kind, help me, I'm stuck, any kind, help me, any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. Now, you grew up in the 70s or 80s, we would have records back then, and sometimes records will skip. It keeps repeating the same word over and over and over and over. That's what happened to me as I'm reading. I got stuck. Any kind. Because some people want to say, okay, oh, you have financial troubles. That's no big deal because you make good money. Oh, another person, you got medical problems. You say, that's no big deal. I muscle my way through it. Diet and exercise. And others say, well, I got relational problems. Oh, that's no big deal. I've worked through those things. But I want you to see that any kind means any kind. Whatever kind of trouble you're in, don't you dare say that that word of God doesn't apply to my trouble. James is telling us to live up to our faith, the standard of our faith, the character of our faith, the values of our faith, knowing that you can turn obstacles into opportunities, any kind of obstacle. So James says, be joyous during difficult times. Our problems have potential opportunities in them. If you worry about your problems and you worry about what's going on, worry, it's a stranglehold to faith. When you think about the etymology, the historical foundation of the word worry, it comes from the Old English, which means to slay, to kill, to injure by biting or shaking the throat. The imagery is of a dog or a wolf that grabs its prey around the throat and starts to squeeze it with its jaws and shakes it, vigorously left and right as it's squeezed down. And so James is saying that if you don't turn your obstacles into opportunities, but you let worry grab you by the throat and squeeze the life out of you, you are not going to fulfill your potential or thrive. And so you must learn then to throw worry off your back by saying, how can I turn this obstacle into an opportunity? And I know when it's happening, it's not pleasant. I remember my first engineering job out of grad school. I had this boss, oh man, Andy. I still remember his name. Andy was smart. Andy was about maybe 15, 20 years my senior. He was a Ph.D. in engineering, also a professor of one of the leading engineering schools here in New Jersey, and he had a PE license, that's a professional engineering license, and I'm fresh out of grad school, first job. My field is environmental engineering, and so I'm working in environmental engineers. When you get hired by a consulting engineering firm, you're called to give your expertise, give wisdom and insight, and write reports and answers to how you'll solve a problem. And so I'm writing my report, and Andy would come out of his office and come into mine, and he would stand behind my desk as I'm sitting down behind my shoulders, looking over my shoulders as I'm writing, and he was tall on top of that, like 6'4". So it's just looming over me. I'm sitting there. I'm already short. Now I'm really short because I'm sitting. And this tall guy standing over me, and he starts laughing every time I'm writing. He's laughing at my words. He's laughing at how I write. And I'm getting angry. And when I finished my report, I go into his office and I give my report, and he didn't even blink. He pulled out of his pocket a red pen. Not black, not blue, red. And he started to butcher my report and just laugh. This is ridiculous. And then he handed it back to me. And one day I got so angry. No, I didn't get arrested, even though it was tempting. But I said to myself, while Andy was butchering my stuff, I said, I'm going to fix him. I'm going to go to Barnes & Noble afterwards, and I'm going to buy every book I can buy on writing. And that's what I did. And every evening after work, I'd read these books and pour myself over these books, and my writing began to improve. Now today, I've written over 30 books that have been translated into all kinds of languages. And I attribute that to Andy. If Andy was not, I didn't like his style. But I couldn't argue with his content. And so style was not good. He was mean, he was terse, he was unkind. And so, and some of us, we get distracted by all that. And I must admit, initially I did, but I had to look behind that. I said, is there any value to what Andy's saying? And when I took a step back and gained perspective, I said, well, let me go and try to improve my writing. And so I want you to see that if you learn to turn obstacles into opportunities, something may emerge out of your ordeal that you didn't anticipate. I had no idea that camouflaged under this bad writing, that was this writing gift that would emerge and become something good, where the main big publishers pick up my works. And why? Because I allowed Andy, that God used Andy, as mean as he was, as terse as he was, as unkind as he was. God used Andy, and thankfully that God used me to allow these words to affect me to a point where I can say, I want to improve. And I want you to see, if you're going to thrive, you have to have an attitude that wants you to thrive. You can't make excuses. Now, if your name is Andy, you better not come up to me. Use your middle name when you talk to me. But what James was telling us is that when we go through difficulties of any kind, we need to look at it with this joyous look. Why? Because there's opportunities there. He said one of the opportunities is that you'll learn to persevere. And the word persevere, it carries with it a forceful meaning. It doesn't mean waiting out trouble in a passive way. No, it's a forceful meaning. Dr. Barclay, renowned Greek New Testament scholar, says that persevere means it's the quality that enables a person to stand up facing the storm. You need to face your difficulty. Why are you cowering under fear because of this difficulty? Why are you letting difficulty crowd your creativity and cloud your innovation and cloud your ability to talk to God? Face the storm. Stand up in the face of that difficulty and say that greater is He that's in me than he that's in the world. No weapon formed against me will prosper. That my God will supply all that I need. You need to be able to speak right to the storm rather than running away from the storm and hiding out until the storm blows over. No, the word, it's a forceful word. Persevere. Stand up. Face the storm. You are called to thrive. It is the will of God that you flourish. It is the will of God that your family is resilient. You are not going to go under. You're not going to go into bankruptcy. Come up with a creative idea. Ask God, the wisest person in the world, to give you wisdom on your financial ordeal. Let God speak to you. Let God send you in the right place. Let God have you meet the right person. Ask God for divine connections. Ask God to show you a ram caught in the thicket like he did with Abraham of old. I'm simply saying to you that you serve a God whose will for you is to thrive. His will is for you to flourish like a well-watered garden. His will is for you to be able to flourish like an engine that's moving in a seamless way. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so glad that I'm a follower of Jesus. He gave me the DNA to be resilient. He gave me the DNA to flourish. He gave me the DNA to thrive. That's why I'm not an atheist, because they have no answer when they go through difficulty. I tell you that I serve God because even if I go through difficulty, I don't go through it alone. He says, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. I'll jump in the hole with you and we'll walk out together. Come on, someone magnify our God. That's who we serve. We serve a God that gives us the ability to thrive in the face of difficulty. Have you ever heard of the name of a British guy named George Mallory? Well, in the 1920s, Mallory was fascinated with the idea of climbing the tallest mountain in the world, Mount Everest. It's located between China and Nepal, that boundary. And so he went on the first expedition, it failed. Second expedition, failed. Third expedition, he got these, just real crack shot guys who were good mountain climbers, and an avalanche came and wiped out most of his team, killing them and killing Mallory. Just a few team members were left behind. When the team members that remained behind went back home to England, they threw this party, and the leader of the surviving team, he stood up and everybody applauded and acknowledged the team members that remained behind that didn't die from the avalanche. And then this team member that stood up did something very unusual. He turned around and faced the picture of Mount Everest and he started to speak to the mountain. He said, I speak to you, Mount Everest, in the name of all brave men living and those yet unborn. Mount Everest, you defeated us once. You defeated us twice. You defeated us 3 times. But Mount Everest, we will someday defeat you because you can't get any bigger and we can. In 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay were the first ones to climb Mount Everest. Since then, to year 2024, some 6,664 people have climbed Mount Everest. Some of them have climbed it multiple times. What they have demonstrated by the fact that they climbed it to its highest peak, 29,032 feet above sea level, what they were demonstrating is this: courage grows. And what I'm saying to you is this: if you're going to face setbacks and turn setbacks into opportunities, your difficulty should not grow beyond your faith. Your faith must outgrow your circumstance. Your faith must grow bigger than your difficulty. It must overshadow your problems. You must come to the big, 30,000-foot level in prayer and look down at your circumstance and say that, God, you have given me perspective. My problem looks small in comparison to your divine oversight. And God, help me to look at my problem through your eyes that I may see how small it is, how insignificant it is. God, cause my courage to grow so I can turn my setbacks into opportunities. That's what God's calling us to do. And that's what we must do. Your problem is just an opportunity for you to get bigger. Your difficulty, it's vitamins that you take to grow you up. I love when I'm around strong people. Think about it. When you have 5-year-olds and something happens, they think their crayon broke. They think it's the end of the world. And you've gone through that stage already. So whenever something breaks in your life now as an adult, Imagine how God the Father is looking at our situation. He's saying, this is fixable. You can make this thing work. Let's adjust your focus a little. And let's look at how you can turn this setback into opportunities. So now I can look back to my younger self in my early 20s and say, Andy, thank you for developing a writing gift in me. Thank you for what God is able to do in you and with you and through you to help me fulfill my destiny. I want you to understand that. I remember when one of my books, the book is on faith, and I remember giving it to, it was translated into Korean. I gave it to a Korean friend that speaks Korean, and he read it, because I couldn't read what it says, it's in Korean. And he called over to South Korea and spoke to some family members, and they said, this book is one of the best sellers in South Korea. You know, I can say, Andy, thank you. Even South Koreans are benefiting from Andy helping me turn my setback, my obstacles into opportunities. I wonder what needs to grow inside of you. I wonder, you may think that you're buried, but no, you're just planted. Bloom where you're planted. Let me quickly take you to our third and final point. If you're going to thrive through tough times, you must unleash your thrive potential. Did you get that? In other words, you've not exhausted your potential to thrive. Let me show you the scriptures. James 1, verse 2, this time from the Living Bible. James says, dear brothers, is your life full of difficulties and temptations? Then be happy. For when the way is rough, your patience has a chance to grow. So let it grow. And don't try to squirm out of your problems. For when your patience is finally in full bloom, then you will be ready for anything, strong in character, full and complete. Wow. James is saying, your difficulty, my difficulty, our difficulty, it grows us to our full potential. And he points out even in the area of our patience. This shows that when we are growing and you want to unleash your thrive potential, you want to thrive mentally, you want to thrive emotionally, you want to thrive even spiritually during tough times. And James is saying, you can do that. Your character will grow in maturity as you learn to adjust your focus, as you learn to turn setbacks and obstacles into opportunities, and then you unleash this thrive potential. In other words, don't get satisfied where you are right now. There's more thrive in you. There's more ability for you to flourish. There's more ability for you to be resilient. There's more ability for you to go through successfully and prosper. That's what thrive means. Are you familiar with the program that Harvard launched in 2016? Harvard University launched this program titled Human Flourishing Program. It's a multidisciplinary approach where these researchers and academics, they study how humans can flourish. Because they recognize people are struggling to thrive and be resilient. And so in 2024, the George Barna Research Group, they saw that there was a decline among Christian leaders in how they were thriving. So they decided to go and speak to Dr. Tyler Vanderweel, who is the professor of epidemiology and director of Human Flourishing Program at Harvard. They said, well, let's go and pick his brain. And they said, Dr. Vanderweel, what encouragement do you have to offer us so we can help the constituency of Christian leaders to thrive and flourish regardless of the difficult times they're facing? And Dr. Vanderweel said, many of the well-being practices that our research and the research of others have uncovered can be helpful. Practices such as gratitude, forgiveness, loving acts of kindness, and prayer and contemplation. However, challenges will likely remain. These challenges themselves can sometimes be opportunities for growth through suffering. I think it helps to keep in mind the ultimate aim of all the various activities and efforts of church leaders. It is to improve spiritual well-being. It is to improve it is to promote eternal flourishing. And Dr. Vanderwill concludes, although this has been an especially difficult time, focus on that ultimate end. That final purpose can bring considerable meaning and help sustain and even grow oneself through times of difficulty. So here's an academic saying, look, of all of the years of studying human flourishing, from speaking to people in different disciplines, whether it may be in sociology, whether it may be scientists in hard science, physics, whether it may be mathematicians, whether it may be individuals in the field of psychology, whether it may be people in the field of religion, what I've learned is this, is that if you want the Christian leaders to flourish in difficult times, tell them to stop thinking about the earth and focus on their eternal reward. I want you to see that sometimes we overlook that. We get so caught up here with the mundane, with the earthly. We get so caught up with the everyday stuff, with the day-to-day things, that we forget about we're just sojourners. We're just passing through this world. We may be here for some 70 years, for some 90 years, for some 110 years. Whatever the length of time is, I want you to know we're just passing through. You get so caught up in the car and the house and the coat and this and that, and the job and this, that you get so sullied and you get so bogged down with earthly cares that you are of no heavenly good. So when you finally get to heaven, you just say, oh my God, I finally got here. And you can't even enjoy heaven for the first maybe 1,000 years because you're still caught up with all the junk. I'm saying to you that it's time for us to realize there's a thrive potential inside of you. How do you thrive? The academics are saying you thrive by showing gratitude. You thrive by demonstrating forgiveness. You thrive by being able to be satisfied with what you have. You don't need more. Be content with what you have. And if you can learn just gratitude. What do you mean gratitude? Just say thank you. When you go home and you say, and you may say, well, man, the meal is burnt. Just say thank you. At least we had meal to burn. I'm having a burnt offering today before the Lord. I just want you to know there's a gratitude that helps. May we be a people of gratitude. May we learn to be flourishing people. May we learn to be resilient. Yes, you're going through. Yes, you may have a difficult way. But that difficulty doesn't define you. That difficulty does not establish your ceiling. There's thrive potential. I'm always amazed when I see the concrete that's so dense crack because of the roots of a tree. I'm always amazed when I see dandelions just pushing through concrete and flowers and just blooming. I'm always surprised when I see weeds growing in the gutter of a house. There's such resilience, and here we are. We have the Holy Spirit in us. And God says, I'll never leave you, nor will I forsake you. That I'm with you always, even until the end of the age. And you're letting that little thing knock you down? I love what Eugene Peterson said in the Message Bible. Eugene Peterson, he says, there must not be much to you then. I want you to recognize that you got to bring the stuff. One of our pastors, when he was doing his internship, he was at a church in the Bronx, and they had him preach. Now, when you preach in New York, even the Christians boo you if you can't preach. I just want you to know. And so, man, he preached his heart out that day in the Bronx. So he's there, a seminary student. He preached his heart out. When he finished, a young lady in the service just jumped up and said, "That's it? That's all you got? Don't tell me that's all you got." In other words, this is the Bronx, the boogie down Bronx. We live hard here, and we need the Word. And I'm saying to you that you need to know during tough times, it creates tough people. Be tough. Be resilient. Be flourishing. Thrive. There's more to you. Come on. Let's magnify our God. Yes, Lord, we love you. Let's stand together, everyone.